Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or wherever or whenever you might be listening to this very beautiful podcast. I want to welcome you specially to the weekly podcast on life in the university. We've been having a very interesting episode. All right, we started this episode sometime in January 6th. All right, and this is going to be our fourth episode. And we've been discussing a very interesting topic. Life in the university is a gift. And of course, I did tell you that this is an attempt to help you understand the four priceless gifts that the life that the university life gives to every student. All right. I helped you understand that, most times as a student, when you get into the university space, and by the way, the term university I have used as a generic term that houses all forms of tertiary institution. All right. So I have realized once a student is admitted, you know, the student really struggles to fit in, all right, to adapt to the changing environment, right? And all of those struggles in trying to fit in trying to relate to people, and trying to understand how the university really differs from, their completed experience at the secondary school, all right, and the whole of the, restrictions and whole of, the restriction around secondary school. Now they are into a space where you have absolute freedom. Nobody's checkmating what you're doing. Nobody's restricting what you do, what you wear, where you go, what you eat, right? And the rest of that. Now, that excessive freedom, all right, or that will you now have can be to your advantage or can be to your disadvantage. It all depends on how you are able to, you know, put yourself together in this very community where you now find yourself. All right, it's how you're able to identify some of the keys, the principles that will help you live an effective life on campus. And if you've been following through my episode or my previous podcast, I made you understand that most students, about 60 to 70% of the students in the tertiary institution are not living an effective life. All right, they are living a very, very ineffective life. All right, and this stems from three main areas. Firstly, from the lack and the understanding of the priceless value of education. All right, most of them don't know or don't haven't identified the keys and the laws of academic excellence. And this is very important for academic excellence, all right? And most students, lastly, don't know how to live an effective life in university. So this podcast is an attempt to give, you know, uh, an orientation to new students and, of course, returning students in the various campuses, not just in Nigeria, but to the rest of the world. The podcast is targeted to the global student community. So I want to welcome you specially. All right. So last week I helped you to understand. We've been talking about the gift of friendship and relationship. All right. And I did help you understand that the first things that happen around you know the gift of friendship and relationship is that is that understanding that helps you come to the light that every student, inclusive of you, right, we are created in a way, right, or we are designed in a way where we crave for, support. All right. There's this inward cravings, all right, we have, all right, that, just longs for support. And I did tell you last week or last 2 weeks, all right, that supports are in different forms, different types, and in different kinds and sizes. All right. We have spiritual support, mental support, financial support, material support, academic support, and all forms of support. Now, I said how this cravings is satisfied is through relationship. All right, through the relationship you have with friends and people you have around you right in the university space. Okay, and I helped you understand, I helped you from my experience and personal stories. I help you understand that I, for one, have enjoyed, this support in different ways from different people, of which I showed you their pictures last week. And I did ask you a question. I told you to take a stock of your friends you currently have and ask yourself how you can be a gift, all right, a gift to your friends, and how you can appreciate those around you who are a gift to you. Because one thing is very certain: if you don't take a stock of those you have around you who might, have been supporting you in different ways, different forms, you won't realize what they have done for you, or you won't realize how much of a value, they can give to you, or how much of a what they really make, or their impact they can make in your very life. All right. And most especially while you go through life university. And most especially, I also told you that it was after my time of the university space, all right, as a student, as an undergraduate student, all right, it was when I began to realize that, oh, wow, this person really meant so much for me. And how come I didn't realize? I know why I didn't realize. I wasn't attentive enough, all right, to pay attention to that. And I don't want that to happen for you. All right. So, welcome back to the fourth episode. And today we're going to be talking about the gift of exposure. All right. The third gift the university experience or university life gift to every student is that gift of exposure. All right. That gift to exposure. All right. So, to help you understand this better, all right, to help you understand this better, okay, I'm going to be sharing you a few exposure lessons, all right, few types of, the different types of exposure and their impact. All right, I'm going to be sharing you a few of my exposure lessons I learned as a student right in university. Okay, and as I do, I need you to begin to take an account of your exposure experiences as well. All right, now, what is exposure? All right, what is exposure? Now, exposure can mean different things to many different people, especially from people from different walks of life. Exposure might mean something different to a geologist. Exposure might mean something completely different to a medical doctor, might mean something different to a political scientist, might mean something different to an astronaut, or whatever field of life. We have different definition for that very word exposure. But I want to help you understand this. Hence, you're a student. I want to help you understand this from a student perspective, all right, from a student context. All right, now, so exposure refers to, the opportunities and experiences that the university life provides. All right, the experiences and the opportunities, the university life provides to you as a student. Now, thereby broadening your horizons and helping you grow personally, academically, and in other important areas in your life. What that means is that there are certain experiences you go through while you go through life university, or while you go through your day-to-day activity on campus. There are certain experiences you have. I usually classify these experiences in three folds. There are the good experiences, there are, the sweet experiences, good experiences, ugly experiences, bitter experiences. All of these are, the different forms of experiences you are likely to go through. All right. And you can't be over spiritual about this. Now, what I mean by that is there are certain days you don't plan for a bad experience, but it comes your way. Now, when it comes your way, your ability to react to that in a positive note or on a positive note is what will distinct you from other students. And this is why Life University is so focused on helping you live effectively. Most times, you don't control what happens to you, all right? But what you can control is how you react to that. You can't control what comes your way, but you can react to what comes your way. All right. So we will normally go through all of this experience. So now, within the context of exposure, All of those experiences you begin to, you begin to face daily, monthly as you go through the pursuit of, graduating or going through your academic program are what forms the basis for your exposure. All right. It brings your way opportunities also contained in every experience, contained in a good experience, contained in a bad experience, or if you like, an ugly experience is a value, an invaluable lesson. All right. It's a lesson to grow, a lesson to become a better version of yourself. All right. A lesson that will help you do more than you've done. A lesson that will help you avoid, certain things that you should be avoiding. All right. In fact, certain experiences will come your way and you just suddenly realize, I shouldn't be friends with this person. Oh, I shouldn't be friends with the other person. Do you understand what I'm saying? All right. These are exposure and it's born out of our daily experiences and brings our way opportunities. All right. And when all of this happens, or as it begins to happen, all right, as it begins to unfold, as the experiences begins to unfold, all right, as the opportunity begins, continually comes our way to grow, something definitely begins to happen. You now begin to experience a broadening of your horizons, right? What that means is that your mindset begins to improve. Okay, your mindset begins to improve. You begin to develop, a certain image about, that very experience, or a certain image about your campus experience and the rest of that. Once that happens, you begin to experience growth. All right, you experience personal growth, you experience growth in your academics, you experience growth probably in your spiritual life, all right, in your mindset, in your health, all right, relationship, and in other important areas of your life. I, for one, I can assure you, I'm that one person that had gone through, um, a long, a long list of exposure experiences that have shaped my life personally, my academics, my spiritual growth, and across many areas of my life. All right. Okay, so in context, that is what, in a student context, that is what exposure refers to. Now, exposure can help you develop critical skills like you can find on your screen. There are certain experiences that comes your way, and whoa, you develop that critical skill of solution finding and problem solving. Now, by the way, that was the first gift Life University gives to you. All right, you can listen to our last two episodes where we started from. All right, so solution finding and problem solving. It's a critical skill you develop while you go through experiences during the life on campus, all right, or during your stay in the university. There are certain experiences that happened to me, and it literally turned on the light bulb on the inside. I was like, oh my God, this is the problem. Oh, if I should do one, two, three, I'm certain I can solve this problem. My mindset shifted from, complaining about a problem, right, to preferring solutions to that very problem. So my thinking was not problem based. My thinking was solution based. Do you understand what I'm saying? And now that is a function of exposure. All right, it helps you develop critical skills. How about communication? It was during my time in university I began to develop how to communicate effectively. All right, certain times I get remarked to say, "Oh, bro, I love the way you speak. And when you speak so personally." I'm like, "Oh, yeah, that's true." Among the trainings, among the certification I might have, which is of course very important to the development of this very skill, but I can't take away the integral role, exposure and my experiences on the campus gave to me, because it was right in the campus I began to develop, the art of communicating one on one, one to many, and the different forms of communication. Do you understand me? And that's a critical skill you can develop. How about interpersonal and relational skill? Also, a priceless gift, a priceless skill you develop in the course of exposure. All right, you now begin to relate to people. You now begin to understand that people are of different temperaments, and people will exhibit traits that are liking to their temperaments or their personality. You now begin to understand that there are certain people who are called introverts. They only respond to things within them or inside of them. All right. We have people who are called extroverts, right? They respond to things outside of them, even things that don't really, that necessarily does not connect to them. They respond to them. They respond to things like that. You now have to understand, how do I relate to an introvert and how do I relate to an extrovert? Now, I, for one, I have various friends, friends who are introverts. And if you've been following through my podcast, you would, of course, you must have heard me mentioning some names. I have friends who are introverts. I have friends who are extroverts. Now, the way I relate to my friends who are extroverts, and of course, I am an extrovert, all right? I'm really extroverted, all right? The way I respond to my friends who are, friends I have who are extroverts are clearly different from the way I respond to friends who are introverts. The mode of communication, the mode of interaction, my relationship with them are really different. And now this came through the basis of exposure. There are certain things or there are certain remarks you might tell, I might tell a friend of mine who is an introvert and it will lead to something else. For example, if I see a friend of mine, probably a female, and this is not a very perfect example, just a glimpse of what I want to share with you. All right. If I see a female friend of mine and I see her, I haven't seen her in a long time. And, this day I just, I ran into her. I'm like, whoa, my God. You're looking so good, oh. You've even added weight. Now, that remark of adding weight can turn her off. Do you understand me? Now, the intention behind that might be genuine. I might really be saying, wow, you're eating good food. What's happening? Who's taking care of you? You're just shining. You're looking very good. What's happening? You are eating your money. Do you understand? Certain very casual remarks. Now, these might not go well with an introvert because at the end of the day, the introvert might be saying, all right, are you trying to tell me I'm overweighted? Are you trying to tell me I am shapeless? Do you understand what I'm saying? Now, I must know how to communicate with them. In such a scenario, if truly she have added more weight than usual, I could say, what have you been eating? You've just been enjoying yourself. See how you've grown. No, you're now a big girl. Now, an introvert might get the message I'm sending, but will not take it as an offensive remark. However, my extroverted friends, I can just look at it and say, hey, this guy, the way you are growing, the way you are just growing. If you don't watch it, you will just grow bigger and bigger and bigger. My extroverted friends will laugh and say, hey, my guy, don't be so. Do you understand what I'm saying? What I'm trying to help you understand is that I have learned how to relate with them on a different level. How about critical thinking? There are certain things that happens to you during university time. You are able to reflect, deep thinking, deep learning. All right. How about adaptability? The land you're coming to school in is purely, or sometimes, oftentimes, not your land. You're more like a foreigner or stranger in that land. So you have to adapt to cultures. You have to adapt to languages, barrier, and the rest of that. You have to adapt to their meals, their food, different places, different things they do around that very environment. And that happens on the strength of exposure. Teamwork happens, as exposure continues to grow. All right. So that is just so very beautiful. Now, before I just go further, I want to give you a classic story. Let me give you a classic story, all right? I'll show you a classic tale that perfectly illustrates the consequence of limited exposure. Now, it's a very old story. It's an age-old story, but the lessons remains timeless. All right. Now, the story recounts, a man embarking on a long sea voyage. Now, this voyage was expected to last for about 7 days. All right. So of course, by responsibility, he dutifully purchased his ticket and boarded the very ship. Now, throughout the journey, something remarkable happened. Throughout the journey, the stewardess would oftentimes come and announce meal times. Oh, it's time for breakfast. All right. It's time for lunch and it's time for dinner. And everybody is expected to proceed to the main dinner room. All right. For for breakfast, for lunch or dinner. However, this very man you can see in the picture, this very man, fearing that he couldn't afford the meals, will remain in his cabin. He will remain in his cabin because he had purchased a large pack. He had this pack of, he had a pack of large bag of cheese and crackers. Now, relying on these mega snacks to sustain him. What that means is that he had this big bag of cheese and crackers. So while every other person proceeded while every other person made their way to the main dining room to have breakfast, to have lunch or dinner, he would just remain in his cabin. All right, brought out his cheese and his cracker and he began to crunch them. And this happened for a period of 6 days. Now, during this time, he made some friends. And now one of his friends walked up to him and told him, that, and this happened on the seventh day. Remember, this journey was supposed to last on the seventh day. Now, right? And he has eaten, cheese and cracker for the past 6 days. I'm just wondering how he will be faring. All right. So on the seventh day, one of his friends just came to him and said, "Come, what's happening?" And he confronted him and said, "What's happening? I just realized that whenever it is time for meal, whenever it's meal time, I don't get to see you at the main dining room. What's happening? Is there a problem? Is there something? Why have you been disappearing?" All right. And the man felt embarrassed and confessed. He said, "See, I want to tell you the truth. See, I can't afford the meal. So I've been snacking my cheese and my cracker." Ah, and his friend was like, "Ah, you don't know?" And the friend went, "You don't know what? What don't I know?" I say, don't you know that while you were purchasing your ticket, it included the entire meal for the voyage? And the man who had been eating cheese and cracker was, oh my God. Now that represents the consequence of a limited exposure. That is what a lack of exposure can do. Now, this man didn't realize that his ticket had covered the cost of the meals for the 7 day journey. And all along, he kept on feeding on crackers and on cheese. I'm just wondering how much he can eat on the seventh day. Do you understand what I'm saying here? And now, this is just to help you understand what exposure or the lack of exposure can do to you as a student. All right. And now, let me now help you understand this more clearly. Of course, exposure is one of the prizes gift that the university life gives to every student. However, it's very crucial to understand that there are different types of exposure. All right. And as a student, you have a responsibility to selectively embrace only the right kind of exposure while distancing yourself from the wrong kind of exposure. Now, I'm going to walk you through, you know, a list of exposure. Of course, there are not many. We only have two kinds: positive exposure and negative exposure. You might want to call them the good exposure or the bad exposure. But let's work with positive and negative. All right. Now, if you look at my table clearly, you can see, a long list of where both kind of exposure distinct or differs. Now, firstly, positive exposure will build a new character. It will foster empathy, it will foster resilience and a growth mindset. While you go through some of those experiences on campus, character is born. All right, you begin to develop a very, very consistent character that lines up with the right value. All right, you begin to develop empathy. Empathy really means, putting yourself in the shoe of other persons, right? While trying to help them go through or solve whatever plight they might be going through. All right. And that represents, growth mindset. There are certain experiences I've gone through. All right. And at the end of that, I just noticed my character has changed. I just noticed my character improved. All right. There's certain times I had to give out of the little I had. And whenever I did that, I just felt these satisfactions. I just felt this satisfaction inwardly. I just felt this peace. And that taught me that, when you give of yourself, your resources, there's there's this feeling of, wow, you've done well, that you get inside of you. All right. Now, what does negative exposure do? It will damage your character. It will lead to cynicism. You're right. It will lead to bitterness, and it will give you a fixed mindset. For example, let's say you have a friend who would never talk good about other persons, or who would never see, the better side of anybody, regardless of, if they are friends or enemies. You know, if you stay long enough with that person, certain things are bound to happen to your career. You will damage your reputation because you develop a mindset that doesn't appreciate the uniqueness of people. Rather, you develop a mindset that begins to look for the faulty areas of individuals. You begin to look out for, this guy, this guy used to do like this. I don't like him. This guy, he's always looking at me one bad eye. Do you understand what I'm saying? This guy, he talks too much. And rather than appreciating the gift of communication that guy might have in words, all right, you rather look at him and say, you talk too much. You just be talking too much. Do you understand what I'm saying? Or you find a fellow who doesn't talk too much, who is always calm. You say, that guy, you just be doing like, you know, I don't want to use certain words, but you know where I'm going. All right, what are you doing like all day? You're just too calm. You're just too calm. Do you understand? You begin to damage the reputation of everybody. You begin to criticize. You begin to develop bitterness. All right. Positive exposure will inspire compassion. It will inspire compassion. All right. However, negative exposure will breed indifference. You just begin to behave in a certain way that does not align with, the right values. Positive exposure will foster appreciation. You begin to respect the views of every other person. For example, you're a student who's coming from the east, and now you find yourself in the north. All right. And now you don't understand the northerners have certain cultures there that they really hold very key. Now, you as an Easterner who don't really understand any of this culture, when you come in, you are expected to appreciate their culture. And that is what positive exposure will do for you. All right. If they tell you, oh, we don't eat certain meals here, you should have, the mindset that appreciate what they don't eat and appreciate what they eat. Do you understand me? However, negative exposure begins to help you compare. Say, no, 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 no. Uh-uh. These people, they don't eat good food here. Look at what they're eating. All of their things is this and this is this. They eat one kind of food every day. What kind of food is that? That's not a good food. Do you understand? You begin to criticize. All right. Positive exposure will help you cultivate, a desire to help and contribute to the society. While I was a student, as a first degree, during my undergraduate experience, I had a worship center of which I still worship in. Oftentimes, we go all out for community development service. All right, we might choose to clean up the whole environment and the rest of that. Now, that cultivates a desire in wanting to help or contribute to the society positively. However, negative exposure at the other side, we discourage engagement in any kind of activity that contributes to the society. So rather than trying to help clean the society or clean where you're currently staying or your environment where you're currently living, I'm speaking to you now that is listening to me. That's your private hostel you're staying. If you come outside, I'm very sure you might see trash around, or there's this river that won't flow well, and as a result, it's filled up with a whole lot of mess and the rest of that. Why can't you get risks? Why can't you bring about it in, bring the discussion up, get fellow hostel mates who would help, clear that very path so the water can find the water can move freely, and it doesn't cause. Do you understand what I'm saying? What I'm trying to just tell you is that you have to have that eye in wanting to contribute to society. And that comes from a place of exposure. Because after my experience all along during my first degree program in my worship center, I began to realize that, wow, this is something good to do. And I began to inculcate it in other places I find myself. If I find myself now in a place, in a new environment, after 1, 2, 3 months, I'm already looking at what can we do? How can we contribute? Do you understand what I'm saying? All right. Positive exposure will improve your horizons. It will encourage you to think more intellectually, all right? And you begin to think As you begin to think more intellectually, you begin to bring out solutions to problems. However, negative exposure will limit your perspective. You can only see things from one angle, one view. You are limited in sight. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. You begin to complain and begin to nag of whatever you might be going through or whatever you might be experiencing. Positive exposure, the other side, expands opportunities. It creates valuable connection and opens door to success. And I personally have seen this. There's certain relationship I kept, and probably in another series, I'm going to be telling you, the different ways exposure can come through the agency that breeds, positive exposure. All right. There's certain times or there's certain relationship I've developed, and it just had a way of improving my net worth. All right. It had a way of reflecting, even reflected on my bank account on the basis of, valuable connections and beautiful relationship. It opened the doors for success. At the other side, negative exposure will restrict your growth. It will limit your personal and professional development, due to fear and isolation. I hope you know what you're currently doing in university. You are currently on the pathway to professional development. If you are undergoing a course or you're studying a course that concerns banking and finance, and you want to be a banker or you want to be a finance person, all right, you should understand that you should already understand that you are on the pathway, you are on the journey to professional development. Now you have to look beyond whatever might be happening around your class setting and begin to develop some strategic relationship that will usher in professional growth and professional development. This is why I get to be a little bit critical, or I get to be a little bit harsh on students who won't form a relationship with their lecturers. I mean, if you have a lecturer who is already practicing in the field of banking and finance, why not be friends with him and begin to learn some of the things you need to learn? All right, that's an advantage because in addition to being your lecturer, he has certain experiences around that field, around that sector that you don't have. So, positive exposure will help you meet him, communicate freely with him, all right, establish a connection with him, develop a relationship with him that will now usher in professional development. Because one idea from him, one suggestion from him can change your experience or your understanding about what you want to go into as a lifetime. All right, this is the much I can take about exposure. Don't worry, in another series, I'm going to be breaking it down in more details. I will mean to help you understand, those pathways that leads to exposure, all right, positive exposure and negative exposure. I'm going to give you some red flags of exposure, certain things that happens around you, and you can already tell that this will lead to a negative experience, all right, and this can lead to a positive experience. Until then, my name is Rise Michael Godfrey, and I am your friend. Could you have questions to ask? I would be taking your questions by next week after sharing on the last gift, all right, that Life University gives to every other student. So you can write me on WhatsApp on 07032300590. The dialing code is +234, all right? Or you can write to me, all right, on arisegodfrey@gmail.com or across my social media handles at Arise Michael Godfrey. Okay, until next time, I would be expecting you back on the weekly podcast on Life University. Do have a great week ahead. Thank you, and I love you.